All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Vicki Suter. I'm the Director of Rights and Advocacy. I want to welcome you to our training. I want to apologize again for the lateness of getting out the link to you for this webinar. We had a major technical issue with our online registration and we weren't able to download the registration for this session. So we had to do some end arounds with the company. And so we were able to do that just in time, so to speak. So I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that we get to be here, and I think you're going to really enjoy this presentation today. Next slide.
Alrighty, so a bit of housekeeping before we get started today. So this training has been approved for one social work CEU. If you are in need of that CEU, you will need to, 1, be on the training the entire time, and 2, fill out the evaluation that will go out in the chat at the end of the training. If you are not in need of a social work CE but still want a certificate of attendance, you can also select that as an option on the evaluation. So as I mentioned, the evaluation is going to go out in the chat. So let's take just a moment to talk about the features of Teams today. So depending on what version of Teams you have, you're going to have a toolbar on either the top or the bottom of your screen. There's some important features there, one being the chat. It is a little bubble with 2 lines through it. We will be monitoring the chat today, so if you have any questions, feel free to put those in there, and we can address those when there is a good time to do that. You can also use the reaction feature to raise your hand, or provide feedback via a thumbs up or what have you if you choose to do that. To the right of those, there is a little camera and a mic icon. If there is a slash through that, that means it is off. We do ask that you keep your camera off, or your microphone off, excuse me, throughout the training just to cut down on background noise. You can, of course, unmute if we pause to answer any questions. It is totally up to you if you choose to have your camera on today. Just be mindful that if you do have your camera on, we can see everything that goes on in the background. And I also do encourage cameras. We like to see your faces to see how you are absorbing the content, and it also just makes it a little more interactive. So that, I think, wraps it up for housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. So again, thanks for attending our session today. This is our number 8 in our series for this year. I want to thank our partners, certainly Mary Sheehan-Bugard from the Development Disabilities. Oh my gosh, Mary, I cannot, this week I have our tail trying to remember the name of your agency. Disabilities Rights.
Developmental Disabilities Council.
Thank you. Thank you. I keep wanting to mesh it with something else. So Mary, definitely want to thank Mary, as I have it in every one of these trainings, because she helped us put this together, got us our trainers, helped us, put together our ideas and really made this happen. I also want to thank Kimberly Hoga from Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network, who helps us get the word out so that all the members of our Tri-County area can attend the training who wish to do that. Also want to thank our OCHN Supported Decision Making Work Group, who really had developed this as a goal to provide education to help us enhance individuals who knew about supported decision making, and making sure that they don't think that guardianship is the only avenue which to support somebody. So I want to thank them for that. Mary and I are also a part of a statewide supported decision making work group, and appreciate all the efforts that they do as well as the support they provide us. So thanks again for the training, and let's go to the next slide. So our today's session is about supporting people through the guardianship termination process. So this could be a difficult one, although we are getting more and more inquiries related to this topic. So our presenter today is Jan Lampman, who has been involved with individuals with disabilities for a long, long time. She was part of the ARC of Midland, as well as she has helped individuals go through this process. So we're very excited that she's agreed to present for us today. So help me welcome Jan. And Jan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please? Awesome. So what we're going to talk about today is restoring rights. And I see Amy's on the call. And so Amy's going to get asked, she's going to get tapped a little bit here to tell her story as well. Go ahead and click to the next. So I'm going to start by telling you the story of Mary. I have her picture up here. She's the lady that is in the wheelchair. Next to her is my son, Justin, the redheaded bearded child. I guess he's a grown man. Next, on the other side of Mary is me and my 2 grandchildren, Sullivan and Eleonora. Mary is my sister who came into my life. So Mary came into my family when I was around, I don't know, 18 or 19, and she was 28 or 29. I just outed her as being 10 years older than me. And she joined my family. She had lived at the Mount Pleasant Center and moved into a 6-bed group home. And her mother had just passed away, and she needed someone to represent her as guardian. And she had already, I was a direct support professional in the group home where she lived, and she'd already been to my house and met my, who would be my husband, and she'd met my father and our whole family. You know, she was like already kind of like integrating herself into our family. And so when I would say, when I was in my early 20s, 21 or 22, and she was 31 or 32, she was going to have the opportunity to move out of that group home, but she couldn't because she did not have, it was a weird thing, but she didn't have a guardian who would allow that to happen. And so she actually asked my husband at the time, Mark, if he would be her guardian. He was an accountant, so he had no idea. He was just starting an accounting career. He had no idea what it meant to be a guardian. But I said, it's not a big deal, Mark. Just do it. It'll be fine. You know, we'll tell you what to say and do. It's all good. And so he's like, okay. So we went to court with the petition for him to become her guardian, and the petition was granted. And we were standing in the entryway of the courthouse, and Mary's case manager came up to Mark and asked him to sign a consent for Mary to get the hepatitis B vaccine because she had steadfastly refused to get it. She probably had kicked and maybe bitten a doctor or nurse or something 1 or 2 times to prevent herself from getting this series of shots. And she didn't want the hepatitis B vaccine. She was afraid of needles. She didn't want to have it done, whatever. So because her mother had passed away and she was in this limbo with guardianship, there was no one that could consent for her to get the shot. So as soon as Mark became the guardian, they wanted him to sign this consent. And all Mark knew in the early 1980s about hepatitis B, he thought it was a sexually transmitted disease, which it, by the way, is. But he thought that the only way you could get hepatitis B was by unprotected sex or sharing needles if you were a drug user or a blood transfusion. And so he thought, well, gee, Mary seems pretty low risk for any of those 3 things. So let me just ask her what she thinks. So instead of just signing the consent, he turned to Mary and said, Mary, what's this about this shot they want you to get? Why don't you want to get it? And so she gave him all her reasons why she didn't want to get it. And so then he just turned back to the case manager and said, yeah, we're going to decline that vaccine at this time, maybe later, maybe another time. And that was like the first time for Mary as a young adult that she'd had somebody who like listened to her and then did her bidding, if you will, right? Did what she wanted. And so for some reason in Mary's brain, that meant that not only was she sort of like a quasi member of our family, but now she was a legitimate member of the Lampman family with papers to prove it. So that's how she became my sister, but that's also how she came to be in my world around the issue of guardianship, right? Because my husband at the time was her guardian. And so for many years, they worked together as a great team. When there was something Mary needed access to, Mark helped her gain access to it. When she didn't understand something the doctor was saying to her about her health care, he would try to help her understand, along with me. I mean, I got to help too, but Mark was like her person. Well, when there were a lot of things happening in Michigan around person-centered planning becoming the law, and about the Robert Woods Johnson project on self-determination, and lots of these initiatives that were really giving Mary more of a voice of her own, right? And so our family talked about it and said, Mary doesn't need Mark to be her guardian for her to be in our family for sure, but also she doesn't really need him to be her guardian to make these decisions. I mean, she really makes the decisions and then he helps her make sure it happens. And so what if we went to court and tried to get that guardianship terminated? And so we decided to do that. That is exactly what we did. And so we went to court, and we were pretty naive because we basically went to court armed with me saying, yep, Mary doesn't need a guardian anymore. And by this time, by the way, I'm no longer a direct support professional. I now have finished managing some group homes and am now working for a chapter of the ARC. So I'm now at the ARC of Midland. And so I went, I was going to testify in the hearing. Mark was going to testify in the hearing, and then Mary's case manager was going to testify in the hearing. And that's really pretty much all we had for proofs. And miraculously, the judge said, okay, I trust all you people. I'm going to let you guys have a shot. And so the guardianship was terminated, and Mary's rights as a citizen were restored to her. At that time, we had just learned about some really simple power of attorney forms that we could use. They're actually, to this day, still available through the ARC of Michigan if folks are interested in them. And so Mary signed this power of attorney so that if she did need help and wanted someone to talk to a doctor for her or talk to community mental health for her, people knew that Mark was the guy. Mark was the one who would be doing that. And so for many years, her guardianship was terminated like in 1996. And so all this time, Mary has operated using supported decision-making tools. Her termination of guardianship and restoration of rights was deceptively easy. I later learned that it's not just as easy as, waltzing into the court and saying, oh, we don't want to have guardian anymore. And the judge will allow that to happen. I later learned that there's a little bit more to it, and that Mary's was just, it was just a situation where we had the right people at the table that the judge knew and trusted. I will tell you, when Mark passed away suddenly when he was 50 years old, there was a moment of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen for Mary? I, at that time, was working as her independent support coordinator, so there was no way I could, become the power of attorney and help her with those decisions. And so the person who became Mary's power of attorney and helps Mary now is that young man, Justin, that you see in the picture. And so he was like 23 years old, and Mary said, Justin, I need you to help me with this. And so he is now the person that Mary relies on to make important medical decisions or to sort through things. Justin got her through a cancer diagnosis and treatment. He's been on FaceTime with her when she was having her colonoscopy. They are a team in terms of her health care and medical care, and they have done a great job together of helping Mary remain very safe and continuing to live the life that she wants to live. She's going to be 70 on her next birthday, which is way longer than anyone would have predicted that Mary would survive, given all of the medical and healthcare issues that she has. And so that is Mary's story of how supported decision-making happened, how she had her rights restored. It was just a simple matter of filing a petition and having a few witnesses and getting it done. Flip to the next slide, please. Because I want to tell you Taylor's story, because it's a little different. This is Taylor, and she just had her rights restored last November. So not quite a year ago. She'd had a guardian from the time she was 18, so about, more than maybe around 15 years. She's always struggled with having to deal with high turnover of staff at the guardian office. She had a public guardian, and so she always struggled with that. She'd have a different person kind of representing her, every few months. So she finally asked a member of her extended family to be her guardian, although she really wanted to not have a guardian. She really wanted her rights restored. But what we did was we helped her get her guardian changed from that public guardian to this individual who was a person that she cared for and cared for her. And then the two of them, along with her CMH supports, along with her case manager and her direct support professionals, all worked together on this plan to help her, one, gain some skills around some issues, but also really create a support network, a natural support network around her, so that when we were ready to go to court and ask that her rights be restored, we would have lots of proofs. We would have, one, have maybe some skills that she's gained, but also be able to show the judge how each and every aspect of her life would be supported so that she would no longer need the guardian, right? We weren't going to try to say that Taylor no longer had a developmental disability, but what we were going to say is that Taylor no longer needs a guardian because she has all these other supports in place. And so a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to show you some of the tools we used to get to that place, right? But if you could go to the next slide. I want to just kind of review. I know you've probably all seen this a million times, but why do we end up with a guardian in the first place? Because we have concerns about education, safety, medical decisions, finances, maybe the person's ability to communicate, sexuality, legal kinds of issues, right? So those are the things that bring us to the table thinking that guardianship is the answer. And maybe in a point in time it is. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way forever. And so we might find ourselves wanting to restore rights. But these are the issues, right? The main issues that people worry about. And so those are the main issues that we have to address when we're thinking about how do we help someone no longer need a guardian, but use other ways to be supported, right? And these are the areas that we have to make sure that we're addressing. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just a few statistical things. This is some old data, actually. We're working on new data. I can't wait till we get our new data sets to share. But, Michigan, as of 2018, right before the pandemic, we were almost twice, we had almost twice as many people with developmental disabilities having a guardian as the rest of the country. If you think about, the state of Michigan and how many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities there are living in our state, to think that 81% of them have a guardian, that's a huge number. And so we know that not all of those guardianships are necessary, right? And so how can we get folks to the place where they have the support they need so that we can restore those rights is the big question. Can we go to the next slide? So, the things that guardianship puts in jeopardy are the things that are really important to us, deciding where we live, consenting to or preventing medical or healthcare treatment. If you go back to Mary's story, had Mark not been the one appointed guardian, she might have gotten some vaccines that she did not wish to get. Now, many years later, what we know is that it's probably a good thing that Mary didn't get those vaccines, because it turns out she's got a sensitivity to something that's in vaccine that's typically in the vaccines. And so we have to be really careful with what kinds of meds and vaccines she gets. But, she, as long as she had a guardian, didn't get to decide that, right? Someone else got to decide that for her. Determining when and how to travel, how you spend your money. One of the things that Taylor really wanted to do is have a little bit more control over how she spent her money. For years, people assumed that she would just blow her spending money in the first week, and then for the whole rest of the month, she'd have no money and she'd be miserable and she'd make everyone around her miserable and it would be terrible, right? Well, guess what? You give her a little bit of control and she rises to the occasion and does a really good job of handling that responsibility that she's asking for. It doesn't happen for everybody, but for Taylor it did, and it was really great to see that she was able to feel that sense of autonomy around that. Her spending money. We're not talking about the money that pays her bills, but her spending money, right? If people want to do something educationally, buying a house, buying a car, all of those things, you don't get to decide for yourself, or you don't get to have a voice necessarily if you've got a guardian. And so those are some of the things that we really, again, think about. How can we support people to be able to do the things they want to do and accomplish what they want to accomplish? Next slide. So we know what supported decision making is by now. It's what we all have. We all have supporters and helpers and people who help us make decisions. And so we just want to try to be a little more intentional about that when somebody is trying to leave a guardianship arrangement, right, and restore their own civil rights. We want to be intentional about how we surround them with their supporters. Next slide. And so again, we've got substitute decision making versus supported decision making, and we're moving from that idea that someone else is going to make the decision to I'm going to make this decision, but I'm going to have help, I'm going to have support, I'm going to have what I need to make a good decision. or a bad decision, because we are allowed to do that too sometimes. Next slide. So how do you get started with the restoration of rights? Well, you start by having those conversations, right? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to do with your life? Who are the people that might be willing and able to assist you? Can we come up with a plan? Can we talk about what would happen if you end up needing a big surgery? Who's going to be that person that helps you navigate that whole complicated process? And start identifying who are the people or what are the ways that you can get supported, right, when you are not going to have a guardian anymore. So you create that plan and then you start communicating with other people. It's really important if you're going to go to court to try to get rights restored that you're able to document, right? So you document what are the alternatives that we're going to use? How are we going to arrange this so that the person's health and safety is still protected, right? Because that's what courts want you to make sure of, right? And then once you've got your plan in place, you petition the court, and you can go into court and present all of the evidence, and the judge will then make a decision. Going back to Taylor, here were some of the things that we had in place, right? So that the judge could look at that body of evidence. We had her case manager who was willing to testify to the fact that guardianship was not necessary, and she listed out, her logic around that. Part of it was some skills that Taylor possessed, and a lot of it was the people that were in Taylor's life that were helping her, right? Taylor happens to see a psychiatrist, and so the psychiatrist did the exact same thing. This psychiatrist had been seeing her since she was like 12 years old, and so she was able to do a longitudinal discussion of all of the skills that Taylor possessed and all the things that would make it so that she would be successful without a guardian. The other documentation that we provided was a tool that comes out of the Charting the Life course that I'm going to show you in a little bit here, that sort of like listed out all the different things that you might need help and support with. And then we identified how Taylor was going to get those supports. And so we added that in as a piece of the evidence for the judge. And with that whole packet of evidence, it became really clear to the court that really the guardianship was no longer necessary. And so that once that petition was filed and we were able to go in for the hearing and present that evidence, then the judge was able to make that decision. Next slide, please. So I would like to share the life course tool, the Charting the Life course tools that you can use, that are available to anyone. They're free on the internet. And what we used in a few, not just the story I'm telling, because Taylor gives permission for her story, but this has happened with a number of other people. And so is it okay if you stop sharing and I start sharing just real quick? Is that going to work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You are a presenter, so you should have that access.
Okay, perfect. Let's see if I can do this. And why is it only letting me choose? Okay, so it's asking me.
So when you hit the share button, there's a couple different options. You can share your screen, or if it's a PowerPoint, there's a PowerPoint Live option at the bottom for recent files.
Okay, okay, what are you seeing?
We do not see anything right now, no screen share.
Oh, okay, hang on here. All right, all right. I tried to just do it and it didn't. Shoot. See, I can do this with Zoom. I can't do this with Teams. Well, all right, now I can't get you back, so I don't even know what to say.
Well, we see and hear you, Jan.
Awesome. Let me try this again, because I've got it up. Okay, what is this? Stop sharing. Okay. So now I'm going to open the share tray and see it's saying desktop or window.
Oh, do you have a Mac, Jan?
I do. Does that cause a problem?
That always has issues, and I don't use Teams on a Mac, so I will do my best to try to help you. But in the past, when we've had presenters with Macs, they would have to allow permissions for Teams, if that is an option.
All right, let me see something here. Give control. No, all right, it's fine. Can you go to the Charting the Life course? Can you pull it up on yours and then we can just do it from yours?
Yeah.
So while she's doing that, Jan, there's a question.
I see that. I do.
Okay.
I'm going to answer the question real quick while she's pulling up the Charting the Life course. So Kelsey asks if guardianship is free to the individual, and no, it's not. This is the thing. All right, now you're going to get me on a thing. So you don't want it. Mary, my sister Mary, she didn't want to have a guardian. But you know what? When the state, because it was actually the Mount Pleasant Center that filed the petition for Mark to become the guardian, when they filed that petition, Mary had to pay $150 out of her money to file that petition. And then if Mark had wanted to, he could have charged her a fee every month. He never did, but he could have charged her a fee every month out of her Social Security money. So like Miss Taylor, when she had a public guardian, right, she had an agency guardian, that agency charged her $65 a month. She gets SSI. So can you imagine, you know, what is SSI now? Like 781 or is that, no, it's 8 something now, isn't it? It's like a little over $800, but $65 of it goes to a guardian that you don't even want. So you don't want the person in your life in the first place. And then you have to pay them out of your money every month. So thank you for getting me all riled up about that. But that is a true story. And so that's, you know, kind of another good reason for people who are impoverished to maybe have other alternatives besides, you know, guardianship. Kelsey's saying at a nursing home that she was at, that was the biggest complaint that people had. And then the next question, Amanda asked if there's any assistance to pay for the petition to dissolve guardianship. That's a really good question. So you can, in fact, ask the court to waive the fees if you are poor. So every single time I help someone file a petition to modify or terminate guardianship, I file also a petition to waive the fees so that they don't have to pay for that. And I've never been turned down. So how do you like that? Okay, so Vicki, you just put the thing in the chat, right?
Yeah, she put the link and I am screen sharing for Charting the Life course. So
I don't see it. Does anybody?
do you see any of us?
Yes, it's up. She has it up. So
Okay, I'm only seeing all of you. So why would that be? Hang on, let me try something here.
Stop sharing. Do you need to stop sharing maybe?
I'm good. I see it now. Yep. So go
Okay.
to Life Course Library. Okay. We're going to do this so you guys know how to do it. Go to Life Course Library, then go down to Exploring Life Domains. Yep. And then did you see the supported decision making?
Oops, I think I clicked too fast. Library, life domains.
And then go over to the supported decision making. Yep. Click there. Okay. And then scroll down. And then I want you to click on this tools for decision making, the one on the far left.
Okay.
Yep, right there. Click on that so that we can see that tool. And can you make it a little bigger so folks can see it? I mean, maybe you all can see it, but I'm old. There we go. And so this is a nice little worksheet that you can, like, I assume some of you are case managers or support coordinators or in some other way that you're helping individuals, right? Or a family member, but you can, or like Amy, you're a peer, right? You could do this with folks that you support where you kind of go through this, okay, what happened?
Sorry, I was trying to make it bigger, but it's not working too well.
That's fine. It doesn't have to be bigger. I think if you had clicked on the download, it would make it big, but that's okay. So, but you can go through each of these things and each of these questions and then answer it. So the 3 columns are, this is something I decide without support. This is something that I need support with my decision. And then this is something that someone else handles for me, right? And then you go through each question. So I decide where I want to work. Do I do that by myself? Do I need help? Or does someone else need to decide for me? It's really important that when you're answering these questions, you really think about, does somebody really need to decide that for you? Or maybe do you just need some help or support, right? And as you go through all of these different areas, you can then at the end say, okay, So you've got all these things that you need support. Who is it that supports you? Who is it that you want to support you? And you can begin to identify who would then provide those different supports, right? And then you have a document that you can use to sort of create what the supported decision-making structure is going to look like. You know, who the people are or what the technology is or that sort of thing. You know, going back to Taylor, she still had a few things that somebody just needs to do on her behalf. She said, somebody needs to do that for me. And that's okay too. It doesn't always have to be a guardian that does something for you, right? Like one of the things that she really needs help with, and she just says, I need somebody to do this for me, is paying her rent and her internet bill. Well, you don't have to be someone's guardian to pay their rent and their internet bill on their behalf, right? You just need to have access to the money to pay it. So you could be the representative payee for Social Security, or you could be a second signer on their bank account. There's lots of different ways, right, that you can do that for the person without being their guardian. And so this tool just gives you an opportunity to look at all of the different areas of a person's life where they might be making decisions, right? And think about how does this work best for you? Is this something you just kind of can do? Who are the people that would help you? And what can that look like? This was one of the documents that I often will take into court to show the court that we've been mindful about, you know, trying to plan this out. The judges usually want to make sure they're not interested in having a whole bunch of guardianships in their, you know, in their court. What they're really interested in is making sure that vulnerable people who come to their court have the support they need. So when you can provide the proof that this individual has the support they need to accomplish the things in their life, you're going to be, you know, have far more luck at getting the court to be willing to entertain termination of guardianship and restoration of rights. So this is a really great tool for those of you who are helpers, who might be helping someone look at the idea of, you know, having their rights restored. Do you want to click on the X? And then there's one more document I want to show folks that's a really great tool too. Can you click on that one that's called the Integrated Support Star? Yeah. So this is another way to sort of look at what do the supports look like, right? So I need some help in my life making decisions. So what are the things that I bring to the table? That top blue section, the personal strengths and assets. The purple section, who is in my life that can help me with things. The eligibility specific supports, that's like I have a case manager and some CLS supports that help me do these things. I have a representative payee who helps me manage my Social Security, right? And then community supports, my church, there's people in my church that help me, you know, do X, Y, and Z. And then technology. Technology is really sort of cool because if you remember, safety is one of the things that people worry about, right? And honestly, very often we think having a guardian might help someone be more safe, but unless you're going to handcuff yourself to the person you're guardian for, I don't know how you're going to 100% keep them safe. However, there's lots of technology that you can employ, right, to help people with safety, like, you know, alarm systems and those Ring doorbells and things like that. But also, like in Taylor's case, she loves playing on her phone and she loves apps, right? And we found an app that was really simple for her to use and understand that helps her see where she's spending her spending money. And so she got that app and suddenly she did not need to have somebody else help her make sure her money lasts the whole month because she's got these visual cues that work perfectly for her. So for her, when we filled out this star to submit to the court, we had quite a bit of technology listed as part of what was going to be in her life that would help her instead of the guardianship. Okay, if you want to click that one off. And so if you scroll down a little bit further, I want to show everybody, there's just all of these additional resources, right? So there's like some tools for health decisions and all of the different resources. So if you were to start working with someone thinking, oh, I want to help this person, they say they don't want to have a guardian anymore, you can come out to this library and you can access all of these tools that will help to guide you in terms of putting together not just the evidence you'll need for the court, but also what the supports will look like for this person when there is no longer a guardian in place, right? And it's something you can revisit year after year. So like with Mary, every year we sit down as a family at Thanksgiving and make sure that she's liking how Justin's doing, you know, in case we have to fire him. And assure that she's got what she needs. When Mark died, right, we were like, oh my gosh. We came together as a family and we figured it out. And so these are some really great tools for helping you do that. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and put the slideshow back up, that would be awesome.
While she's doing that, Jan, so in relation to does it cost the person anything regarding guardianship, and to get out of it, does a person have to have an attorney to go to court and get out of guardianship?
So I'm not an attorney, folks, and I've helped lots of people. So you can, if you know, here's the thing, if you've got folks that will testify on your side, right? So it's really important that the court have people that can testify that, yep, this is true. This person really has these supports, right? So for example, in Taylor's case, we had her case manager and a letter from the psychiatrist, right? And her current guardian all agreeing that she no longer needed this. So it was pretty simple, plus all of our written documentation, right? So it was pretty simple. And so we didn't feel like there would be a need to spend the money on an attorney, right? Now in my county, if let's say Taylor had filed the petition, we got her fees waived, and then suddenly someone said they were going to object, and now Taylor needs an attorney, you can get an attorney appointed to you in a guardianship case, right? So if you're filing a petition or a petition has been filed about you, you as the subject of the petition have a right to an attorney. And so you could ask the court to appoint an attorney for you. And that's true, by the way, if you're ever supporting someone who is being subjected to a guardianship, right? Somebody's filing a petition to become their guardian, they have a right to representation. They have a right to counsel. And if they can't afford it, they have a right to have it appointed at no cost to them. So, do you need an attorney? Many people don't have these petitions, but if you do, you file the petition and then it looks like you're going to need an attorney, you can request one. Okay, any other questions real quick? I see Mary and Vicki both put some information about the technology. That's really good. Because that can be very helpful. So now let's just talk about like some of the tools that we've used, right? There's the medical power of attorney and patient advocate forms that you can help people make sure they understand so that when they are able to get that guardianship terminated, they have a way to get the support they need in medical situations. There is the ARC of Michigan has a guide that's very helpful. I say, let's have a look, but listen, after the debacle of trying to share the life course tools, let's just say you can go out to the ARC Michigan website yourself and you can find the ARC Michigan guide. And in the ARC Michigan guide, they have an actual sample power of attorney form. They have some sample patient advocate forms. They have some really good tools that you could just take right out of their guide and use. Go ahead and click next slide, please. Okay. So even guardians, even the National Guardianship Association says, right, that supported decision-making should be considered before guardianship, and the supported decision-making process should be incorporated as part of the guardianship if guardianship is necessary. So the truth of it is that even if somebody you're supporting has a guardian, thinking about how to support them in their own decision-making process needs to be a part of that person's life and that person's world, right? Amy, you're on the call, right? Can you unmute yourself? Is Amy still on the call? No?
I don't think she is. I don't see her in the.
Oh, she came off the call. Okay. If any of you know Amy, or if you're ever in a training with Amy again, you need to ask her who helps her make decisions, even though I think she still has the guardian of estate or the conservator.
Conservator.
The conservator part, but who really helps her make decisions and how she makes decisions, because she doesn't have a guardian of person anymore. However, even though she's got a conservator, she is still, they're using a supported decision-making process. And Amy talks about it all the time. And it's the fire chief. I'm gonna share that piece. It's the fire chief, but she has a really good way that she interacts with her circle to make decisions, even though there's a little piece that still the court oversees. And I think that is really important, that even if you're working with someone who has a guardian, we always want to be supporting them to make decisions. Next slide, please. And, again, even the mental health code talks about guardianships only being used as necessary to promote and protect the well-being of the individual. And that they should be designed to encourage the development of maximum self-reliance and autonomy. And so sometimes our job as the professionals in the person's life, a case manager, support coordinator, is to gently remind, right, those who are guardians of what it says in the mental health code about guardianship, and to try to help, again, encourage those supported decision-making models. I want to talk, though, about this top sentence that's in the mental health code. Guardians should only be utilized as necessary. So there are two legal proofs that must be made in a court to allow a guardianship for a person with a developmental disability to be established. The first one is what they call a lack of capacity, which is a terrible term, but it essentially means that the person, needs support in these very important areas of living, right? In economic self-sufficiency and self-care and all of those things, right? So having the developmental disability often is the basis for saying there's a lack of capacity. Okay, fine. But there's a second proof that often gets forgotten, minimized, or not considered, and that is the necessity. Because just because you can't do something doesn't mean that you need a guardian, right, to step in on your behalf. It just means you need some kind of help or support. And so the way that the legal basis for getting restoration of rights in lots of these situations is that the guardianship is no longer necessary, right? And that's a part of the law that says it has to be, you both have to have some kind of lack of capacity and the guardianship needs to be necessary. And so when you're helping a circle think about restoration of rights, the stumbling block sometimes is, well, they don't have all the skills they need. They don't need all the skills. Is that guardianship still necessary, or are there other ways this person can be supported? It's a very important part of the mental health code that when I'm trying to help families and individuals restore rights, I really lean heavily on. Next slide, please. Okay, again, the law says that guardianship must be necessary. Lack of capacity alone does not make guardianship necessary. So one of the my standard piece of evidence that I will often bring out if I'm asked to testify in these restorations is, does this person listen to wise counsel, and do they have people around who are willing to provide that advice and help when needed, right? So again, it's, does this person know when they need help, and do they know where to go to get it? That is often all it takes to be able to prove a lack of necessity. So, like in Taylor's case, my gosh, we developed an amazing circle of people around her, family members that she didn't even know she had for a long time because of having been, kind of removed from the family and isolated. That are wonderful and amazing supports to her to this day. Same with Mary. She joined the Lampman Kohlhoff household family, and all of a sudden there were all these people that loved and cared about her and that could help her make important decisions. And I'll just tell a real quick story about Mary. She doesn't like to take medicine of any kind, but she has diabetes. And so when she was first diagnosed, they were trying to do some oral medication, and the pills were kind of big for her to swallow. She hated them. And I remember she wouldn't take them for the staff. So the case manager, this was before I was the case manager, the case manager goes over there and is like, you take these meds, Mary Wheeler. And Mary's like, said a naughty word, and said, nope, I'm not taking them. So they called the guardian And they thought that Mark was going to come over and be like, oh, Mary, you take those meds right now. And that's not what happened. He walked in, he grabbed the little med cup that had the med in it. He went over and he started chatting with Mary, and they're talking away about, I don't even know what they were talking about. And she sees him holding the med cup. And she says, do you want me to take that? And he says, yeah, if you wouldn't mind. And so she takes the med. Now, she did not take that medicine because he was her guardian. She took that medicine because they had a relationship, right? And she trusted him, and she knew that he wouldn't make her take medicines she didn't need to take. And so Mary, that in that day, she showed all of us that she didn't need a guardian to come and enforce the rules or to make her accept medical treatment that she needed. Mary needed someone she loved and trusted to help her make those decisions. So that's the kind of things that you can be thinking about when if you're involved with someone, or you yourself are trying to get your rights restored, that you can really think about, who are the people? Do I know when I need help? Does the person know when they need help? And when they do they know who they can go to? And do they have people that they can go to? And sometimes that can be paid people, like your staff or your case manager, right? Or sometimes that can be family members or friends, or the fire chief, as in Amy's case. So can we go to the next slide? So again, the concerns that you address in supported decision-making are the same things that bring people to the table wanting a guardian, right? And so when you're preparing your proofs, you're preparing your the documentation you need for court, but also the framework for the person to use, right? You want to address all those concerns. And so, whenever there's a restoration, if the person's still in school, we talk about how they're going to make educational decisions. If they're not, then we talk about how they're going to make, their medical decisions, their financial decisions, how they're going to remain safe in the community. All of those things that typically bring people into the court in the first place, we address in our proofs, so that when we go into court to get the restoration of rights, the court can see that that the issues have been addressed and there's no longer that necessity for the guardianship. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so I would love to entertain questions at this point if folks have them.
So feel free here to put your questions in the chat. You can also use the raise your hand feature, and we'll kind of call on you just so we're not talking over each other.
Oh, there. Okay.
Jacqueline, go ahead.
Hi. So I'm curious, it sounds like some of these decisions, like the tools, that those worksheets and whatnot, could also be used to help determine whether or not someone needs a guardian, like in the first place, beyond the termination. And so one of the things I'm wondering is, that's a position that I'm in, is, evaluating psychological evaluations and helping determine whether or not an individual needs guardianship.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have on supporting an individual and their family if you're seeing that they could use some supported decision making instead of guardianship, but they're requesting guardianship due to, fears that guardianship is safer, or that they're not certain about some of these other supported decision making resources, since they haven't had as much information about them?
Right, and I think that the advice is to try to educate them on what supported decision making can look like. I would have parents come into my office all the time. Oh, we need you to help us file a petition for guardianship, and I would start asking them, what do they think the guardianship would help, right? We would pull out some of these tools and sort of start going through them together. And often when parents realize what guardianship can and can't do, they come to their own conclusion and say, oh, well, then let's look at some supported decision making. And sometimes, honestly, the guardianship ends up getting put in place, and then we work on the termination or the restoration of rights. One thing that I always say to parents is that it's harder to restore rights than it is to get the guardianship in the first place. And so what would they think of trying these other support strategies? And then if it doesn't work, you could always go and petition the court later, right, for the guardianship. And so a lot of times if you can get them to be willing to sort of delay or stall that petition so that they can begin to see that that the other strategies work, right? I think that helps.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
I see POA versus guardianship. So power of attorney, I'm a fan. I love them. That's what my sister has. That's what Taylor has. It's a certain kind of power of attorney that is like so the way it's worded is, Mary says something like, if I'm sick and have to go to the doctor, I want the doctor to talk to me and to Justin. If there's a paper that needs to be signed, I will sign it only after Justin has read it, and he and I will both sign it. It says something like that. It's very plain language that, that the person understands, and it specifically tells the world how that person wants that to look. And so I love the power of attorney. The other cool thing about it, if Mary gets sick and tired of Justin, she never will, but if she did, she can boot him out on her own. We don't have to go to court. She just says, no, Justin, I'm ripping this one up and I'm making a new one with someone else. And so it gives her that ability to choose, right? So I really like the power of attorney. There's some in the chat. Do you want me to keep you in the chat, Caitlin, or okay? So Kelsey is saying, how can these guardians who have a heavy caseload relate more personally with their clients so that they can build a trusting relationship? Well, so therein lies the problem, right? I was on the phone with a guardian down in Oakland County. It was actually a law firm. And I said something about getting together with the person they serve. And they said, well, we might be able to do that. We're not like a guardianship agency. We only have 140 clients. So they were a guardian for 140 people. And I'm like, how can you know people? You don't know people. And so that's, I think, one of the systemic problems, right? With guardians who have maybe 600 people, or, because there are some 600, 800, 1,000 people that they serve. And so if I were a guardian in that position, I would want to work together with that person's circle to try to figure out who are the people in their life that can be supportive and can help to make good, solid decisions, right? Maybe that's the paid supports that the person has at the group home where they live, and maybe that's family, and maybe that's some combination. But honestly, I struggle with those corporate guardianship organizations that have so many people, because I don't know how they could possibly know someone well enough, right? Okay, so now Debbie is saying you work in a medically assisted treatment program as a therapist and have a client who is not sure if there is a guardian, possibly a payee. She wants control of her money, but some of the questions about asking for help is shaky. So, okay, so she doesn't know if she has a guardian or not. So the first step would be to figure that out. And you can find out by just reaching out to the court in your county's court. That's public record. You can just say, you can, if it's Oakland County, I think you have to go online. There's this online form you have to fill out to find out if somebody has an open guardianship. And then if it's just a payee and she wants more control, I would say that it would be good to reach out to whoever that payee is and try to, bring people together to have some conversation about that. If it's maybe that she thinks the payee is being heavy-handed, or there might be a problem with the payee or guardian, Disability Rights Michigan is the organization that the Social Security Administration contracts with to have a look at these payee relationships and make sure that they're, not going down a bad road. I guess I'll say it that way. I don't know if that answers your question, Debbie, or not.
We do have two hands up, so we're in our last couple of minutes. Debbie says yes, that does. So Amelia, why don't we go to you, and then we'll go to Mary, and we will wrap it up here in a few minutes.
Okay.
Hi, I actually wanted to ask if you guys offered a class on power of attorney, because that's what I'm interested in, or the person I serve is interested in. So I kind of wanted to learn more about that. Is there a good resource for that, or?
Well, Mary's hand was up, so she can probably answer that.
Yeah, also we had done a session on that. Let's see, we did a session on that, powers of attorneys.
February
in March.
2021.
We
Okay.
did that in March 2022.
Okay.
And let's see, I'm looking to see, I think we did, we did a session on supported decision-making in medical situations. So Jan did that one for us in July. So if you go to our website, both of those are recorded. They're only an hour long,
Okay.
and those might be helpful to you.
All right, and that's OCHN, right?
Correct.
Yes.
She's put a
Okay.
quick link in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
I
you
did
so much.
put the link to all of our supported decision-making series, so there's a lot of options for you to choose from there.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Amelia. Mary had her hand up, right?
Yes.
I was just going to add in a couple things in regarding that last question. We are also, we meaning the DD Council, is doing a series with Michigan Alliance for Families, and on November 17th from, I think it's going to be from 1 to 4, you can check the Michigan Alliance for Families webpage. There'll be information from Lisa Lapine, who's the same person who did the presentation for OCHN on power of attorney. So that's another resource for you. And then I was just kind of
Thank
wanting
you.
to respond to some of, you're welcome, respond to some of the earlier questions. You know, when you think about, as Jan said, some of these agencies who are, you know, guardian for hundreds of people, when you think in your own life, maybe list all your best friends. Probably you're not going to come up with 120 some people, 120 some names. Think of how long it took you to develop that friendship, to get to know each other, to trust each other, and be willing to discuss private matters with each other. And then think about a public entity, usually a law firm, that is guardian for 100 and some people and yet are making very personal, very intimate decisions about a person's life. It's really, you know, as Jan said, therein lies the issue with this system. You can't really get to know each other. You know, I often say in presentations that I do, I've had guardians call me and say, so-and-so's, you know, annual report's about ready to be filed. How's she doing? And I'll say, you mean he? Like, they have no idea who they're guardian for. They don't even know the simplest of, you know, information about how the person identifies as, you know, their gender. And so, but yet they're controlling all these decisions about a person's life. So think about it in that typical concept of who do we trust to help us make decisions, and how long does that take?
Right.
So there's another question in the chat about is there a class on petition guardianship when you don't believe the guardian is acting in the best interest of the individual, but the individual still needs a guardian? I was thinking this would have some of that and would be interested in knowing that process. So
I'll just give a quick short answer to what you're asking, Alexis, which is, yes, there is a way you can petition the court. I think it's very similar in that if you help the person petition and then you ask for the fees to be waived because they're poor, you could ask for them to have an attorney who could then help them, right, make their case. But then you as the helper, you know, whatever role you play in their life, could also help them assemble some of the proofs, right? Some of the evidence that that guardian is not acting in their best interest, or is not acting in a way that serves them, right? The person served, the person who is the ward, has the right to petition for a change in guardianship as well as a termination of guardianship. So I think, though, some of the strategies and steps would be similar or the same, right, in that you have to come in with your concrete evidence and proofs that what's happening with the current guardian is not working for the person. You could or somebody could help them file that petition and then request the fees be waived and then request an attorney to assist them.
Great, thanks, Jan. So as we wrap up, just a reminder that we are offering one social work CEU. You must complete the survey. We are asking everybody to complete the survey if you can. And then you would also be able to receive a certificate of attendance. Next slide. There's the link to it is in the chat. We have one session left in our series, and that's on October 25th. And the state work group on supported decision-making has been working for about a year or more on developing a toolkit that has all these different tools and resources about supported decision-making in lieu of guardianship. And so we hope to be able to present the draft of that toolkit, and that will be our last session for this year, so October 25th. All right, next slide. And just again, where to find the recordings, if you go to our website at oaklandchn.org, click resources, recorded training. And if you scroll down to supported decision-making webinar series, be sure you click view all, because that will have the 2022 series are at the bottom of the list. What's showing on the website before you click that is 2021 series, but you're welcome to watch all that are available. Next slide. Thank you for attending our session. We appreciate the great questions that you had. We appreciate Jan, who did a tremendous job of sharing her experience and her knowledge with us. So thank you so much for everybody joining us today.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks.
Remember to take the survey, please. Thank you.